There we go. Okay, and start streaming. Yes. I want to start streaming this live event. Quit asking me, YouTube. Are you sure? Are you sure you want to do it? Yes, I am.
Are you really sure?
Well,
Really.
Don't know if we'll have anyone in the chat, but we'll see. All right. So with that said, I guess I'm going to go ahead and hit the intro and we'll get started. Muting the mic.
You're listening to the Marginally Geeky Show, the epically geeky book club.
Greetings and welcome to the Marginally Geeky Show, the epically geeky book club. I'm your host for the evening, Eugene Stevens. We've got a big crew back again this time, so let's just kind of go around the horn here. Let's see, joining me tonight is Jennifer Hetzel, Chris and Ray Andrew, and Mandy Joe. You're back. Thank goodness. We missed you last time.
Yeah, I'm glad to be caught up.
Good deal. Since we... Go on.
How'd you like doing the intro without a certain somebody...
Oh well, I miss it. I do miss Cyrus.
That was kind of fun last episode.
Yeah. How is everyone since we last talked? It's been a month since we recorded an episode. Well, not quite a month. We were a little late last time, but anything of interest happening to anyone?
We're getting ready for winter.
Already?
Chopping wood and stacking it all up. And
there you go.
Meanwhile, it's over 100 degrees in Texas.
Yes, it is.
It was actually terrible today. It wasn't too bad.
We were probably close to 85, 90.
In or outside of the house?
Outside.
Okay.
It was a little bit
It was probably about 80 in the house.
Jesus. Oh. Yeah, I went down to the coast with the family, and we did Airbnb at a place right there on the beach, and for whatever reason, I guess the people who were there before us ran the air conditioner down too low and froze it up, and so it was 80 degrees in the house at night when we were trying to sleep, and it was miserable. So
yeah, it's not fun.
No, not fun at all. So
sleep under a fan.
Yep.
Well, let's go and get started with our book for the evening. Tonight we're doing book 3 in the Magic 2.0 series. This one is an Unwelcome Quest. Before we get started, I guess just go around like we normally do. Just in general, I guess before I ask what your thoughts on the book were, up to this point, are you interested to see where this series is going? Did you have any thoughts as to where you thought the series was going? Or were you just like, no, I'm just here for the ride?
I still have a theory where it's going, but I don't want it to go where... I hope it's kind of like Lost, where I don't get answers for certain.
Okay. Okay, that's perfectly acceptable. Anyone else want to jump in?
I'm along for the ride. I have no prediction. I don't know. I don't care. I'm just happy to be on the ride.
Right. No, I agree with you on that one. So,
and that's what
I'm so glad you're here. Okay, so with that said, I guess let's just go ahead and well, no, I'm sorry. There is one piece of business we have to take care of before we move into this book. Mandy was not able to join us on the previous episode, and we primed her before the show started. We had a question. We got to a point in the last book where basically all of the male wizards are showing off, and their attempt to capture Nilo, and there was a very quick line that was drawn in the sand, and Ray and I were clearly on the side of, this is exactly how I would handle this situation. Like, I'd be throwing my most wacky goofball fucking.
If you got power, you got to show it.
Exactly, I would definitely be doing that. we would definitely be using our powers to mess around and have a good time with this guy. Jennifer basically was like, "Oh boys, you guys are idiots," which is kind of how.
Deny. We didn't.
Right, we did not deny it at all, and that's actually how it kind of comes down in the book. There's a part where, all of the women are talking, and they see these bright flashes, and all this stuff's going on across town, and they're like, "What is going on over there?" And she's like, "The boys." So, with that said, we kind of got Chris's response last. We talked a little bit after our other show on Saturday night, and you came down on the same page as us, right? Like you were going to use the magic powers and have. So the question is, Mandy, where would you come down on this? Would you be with the guys or would you be with the ladies?
Oh, I'd be with the ladies. But are we talking about like actually stopping Nilo, or when we're done and we just still want to have our giant form just to show off?
Either or both.
Stopping him, yeah.
Stopping him, yeah. Have y'all seen Colossal?
No, I have not. I know which one you're talking about. No, I have not seen it.
Okay, that's what popped in my head when I heard it. It was just like, be this giant thing that can stomp on a city, but like, like I would definitely be on the girls' side of all of that. That whole situation, I would have been on the balcony with the girls. But but this parade of dorks like coming toward them in their form, that's a really funny scene. It is. But yeah, I'd be on the balcony.
Yeah, okay. That, you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, I just thought it was funny that like it, at least with the three of us, it was clearly like, no, this is how the women would handle it, and this is how the guys would handle it. So, but anyway, I just had to ask that. I brought up, and I want to say this because when we get to this point, I'll bring it up as well. I would love more than anything for these books to become a series like on HBO or something, or Netflix. I don't think a movie could do them justice, anywhere near justice. No. I'd love to see them as a TV series. And there's a part so far in all of the books, there's a certain part that I would love more than anything in the world to see this brought to life in a video format. And for me, on the previous book, it was that fight. It was this giant fight of them throwing everything they've got at him and everything else. So, and there is a point in this book where we're going to get to it, and you could probably guess what it is, but we'll get there in a minute. So anyway, so here we go. An unwelcome quest. We start the book off kind of odd because they're welcoming a new wizard. They've done this in previous books. We're aware of what the situation is, but it's a precursor. We're not adding new wizard. We're actually going back to see the wizard that we don't talk about, Todd. And so they've mentioned him in the previous two books, and we finally get to see what it is, and what is it about Todd that makes him what he is. So they're sitting around. It's in the banquet hall or whatever. Todd is sitting next to Jimmy, and they start asking Gary who was his trainer, which everyone's like, "Wow, Gary was his trainer? Like, that's weird." I like Gary as a character, but yeah, I don't know if I'd want him to train anyone. But they're asking him questions, and they're like, so tell us about him. He was like, I don't know. He didn't really say much. He didn't tell me where he was from. He didn't tell me how he found the file. He didn't really,
You didn't ask for the file.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. I asked. But I'm not his biographer. I wouldn't. Yeah. And it starts coming out. They're like, yeah, he just laughed at. He laughed at weird times, and they're like, oh, that's not anything different. We don't think you're funny either. He's like, no, it's not that he didn't laugh at my jokes. He laughed at stuff that he shouldn't have laughed at. And then the gears are starting to turn in Philip's head. And as much as he hates Jimmy, he's looking across, and Jimmy's giving him these looks like, what's going on here, Phil?
I love this scene. I can see it being played out again, like you said, in a movie or a TV show. And I can see Philip looking down and being like, Jimmy's trying to get my attention, which is very wrong. Like Jimmy doesn't do that.
Yeah.
But Jimmy actually looks concerned.
Right. And if Jimmy's concerned, yeah, exactly. We should all be concerned.
It's almost like that time that the Democrats and Republicans came together to oust the dictator that was taking over, and oh, never mind that didn't.
That hasn't happened yet.
No.
The opposite of that is happening, actually.
Yeah.
How's that paperwork going for being a Canadian citizen?
You can immigrate yet there, Jen?
There you go.
I'm
Weed is legal in October. Anyway, so Todd gets up there and he starts giving this speech, and everyone kind of goes along. He's like, listen, I was an outcast, but I feel at home here. And they're all kind of shaking their heads. And then he starts talking about, like, y'all use your magic this certain way, but y'all don't know true power. True power is, everyone's all excited about the flames and stuff from the bomb, but it's the crater after the daycare was there. And everyone's just like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? And then he proceeds to produce kludge, which we had dealings with kludge in the first book, but not too much. And kludge is like stiff. He can't move. He can't say anything. He can't do anything. And what he has done is he's basically put force bands all around kludge. And I should have got it out. It's in my closet right now. I have a Nintendo Wavebird.
I just told Chris what it was. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a video game controller for the GameCube. It's actually a really good controller. They're all right about that in the book. Anyway, but he's basically made it so he can take this controller and move kludge around like he was a video game character. And you can tell it is really hurting kludge. Like, kludge is like, he's got tears rolling down his eyes. At one point, he ends up having him like basically punch Jimmy in the balls. But he doesn't ball up his fist, and you can clearly tell like several of his fingers are broken. And of course, they're like, I hope everyone realizes this is a bad thing. I hope it, and he's, they're like, hopefully Jimmy understands this. Phil definitely is on, he's 100%. But this is how we learn about the first guy that is ever ousted. Like, they come together and they're like, no, we're going to tie you up and we are going to send you back to your own time, and we're going to be done with you.
And it's like, no wonder kludge hates wizards. Like,
yeah.
Yes, and that gives us some backstory on that, because in the first book, we know kludge is just an asshole. We kind of get that the reason why he's so pissed off all the time is because even though he wants to be the biggest and meanest person in this town, he's not.
And the other one's a woman.
That's right. Gert would fucking beat his ass. Yeah. So at this point, kludge is taken to Lead Church, and Gilbreath is basically talking to Phil and kind of gives him. He's like, oh, so what's the plan with this one? And he's like, oh, well, we're gonna send him away so that he can never hurt anyone again. He's like, I understand you don't want to kill anyone. He's like, no, I'm not killing anyone. He's oh, so you're gonna let kludge kill him? Oh, you're very clever. And he's like, we're not doing that either. He's like, oh. I didn't think you were that clever anyway. It's basically this one backhand after another.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they send away Todd, or they basically oust Todd, and that's kind of pretty much it. So, then we flash forward to the present, as it were, and let's see here. There's a guard that is coming up to Todd. Todd has apparently been working with our old buddies Miller and Murphy, our favorite flat feet from the bureau, and they have found a file. They're in the process of trying to work their way through it, and he convinces this idiot guard that for whatever reason thinks he's going to get a job out of this if he can get something out of Todd, to show him what's going on. He basically gets the guy to let him out of the cell, which I'm like, you idiot. Gets the drop on him, disappears. And so now we get to, I guess this is kind of like the precursor stuff. Now we get to the actual story of the book. So, we're at Phillip's house. It's movie night. I love the fact that in the previous books, they were kind of like, we can't really let the other, the wizards that came from a time before us know about stuff that's going on during our time, because it might be an issue. And they've just completely done a 180, and they're like, no, we're gonna have movie night, and I'm gonna show you movies from fucking 1986, even though you dropped out in 1977. Yep. Yeah, so it's at Phil's house, and apparently whoever's house it is gets to pick the movies, and the first movie they watch is Colossus. Has anyone seen Colossus? I haven't either. I've heard of it though, and it is definitely one of those. Let me ask this: how many of you have watched sci-fi movies from the Not, I'm not talking Star Wars. I'm talking about like 70s sci-fi movies.
No.
The Omega Man.
Stay away from all of it.
It is exactly what they said in the book. It is very depressing.
I've seen the Time Machine, the original Time Machine.
Yeah, like it's very and they even say in the book basically the whole thing about science fiction in the 70s was we're all doomed. Just enjoy the ride.
And you want to do an episode on this on 70s?
Well, there's more stuff in the 70s than just that. We did get Star Wars out of it, so so anyway, they're in between movies. Martin walks out for a second. Phillip joins him. He's kind of asking him what's going on. Martin's just kind of in a funk because him and Gwen have had a falling out, and it's because he asked her to move in, and she just wasn't ready for that.
Which how the hell does that even work? Come on, like
what do you mean?
Live in different times. None of this makes sense to me. Okay, just pisses me off. I'm like, really?
Have you gotten? No, I don't want to say.
I'm not on the next book, so
I was going to say wait till you get to the next book. It'll explain it anyway. So, but no, you don't have to talk about it here because basically, I mean, he talks about the fact that Phil's got a great relationship going on with Brit, and they just pop back and forth between times constantly because he even asked him. He's like, I've got a date Saturday night. And he's like, your Saturday or her Saturday? So,
2,000 years difference. It doesn't really matter.
Time travel's hard. And then he has to, of course, make the comment about her being very, very, very forward thinking. Which, I'm sure Martin's just like, oh, great. Thanks for that. So they go back in and he's like, hey, we're going to watch a movie. I'm sure you haven't heard of it. It didn't do well at the theater, but I thought it was really good. It's called Planet of the Apes. And everyone just groans. Yeah. And he's like, what? And they're like, which one? The original one? The sequel? The sequel to the sequel? The sequel to the sequel to the sequel to the sequel? The remake? The reboot? And he's just like, at this point, Roy speaks up and he's just like, doesn't anyone have any fucking original ideas? Do they just keep fucking redoing the same thing over and over again?
Welcome to the 2000s.
Yep, exactly. So they're about to sit down. They're about to sit down and start watching the movie. Oh, then he says he's going to watch The Wicker Man. Of course, they kind of go off on that. And Phillip, Gary, Tyler, and Jeff just disappear. They're gone, just leaving Roy and Martin. And they're like, well, what the hell's going on? They're like, I don't know. They're halfway expecting something to happen. They literally wait around for half an hour waiting for something bad to happen, like Gary did something. And when nothing happens, they're like, okay, well, let's go visit Gwen because that's what we should do. So the four guys appear on the top of this mountain or whatever, kind of on this cliff. And they're trying to figure out what the hell's going on. And Jimmy's there. And Jimmy's in his pajamas. And he makes the comment. He's like, listen, guys, this isn't me. This is not me.
Jimmy, what'd you
do?
But
he came in vertical or horizontal because he's just laying in his bed. And he just falls.
And it just drops, yeah. And he's telling them, I wanted y'all to see my jammies. I'm really proud of them. And I wanted you to read me to sleep. And it was what, like 12 effective things that people do or some shit like that. Yeah. And then this booming voice comes out of nowhere and it's like, silence and you're going to do this quest. And let me make sure I'm getting this right. Yeah, this old man appears and describes a quest. Jimmy points out that they can't do magic because they don't have their hats or staves. They laugh and tell him, by the way, we fixed that. But then they realize they're not able to teleport and that they are vulnerable. And it's at this point they're like, oh, shit. Things might be real. We head back to the
future. One of you will be the leader on this epic quest.
Yes. Sorry. So Martin and Roy show up at Gwen's. Roy is not having it. He's also very standoffish. I think, and I want y'all's opinion on this. I think Roy is written extremely well for the character that he's supposed to be.
For his time period, yes.
For his time period, exactly. Because if you plucked a middle-aged man out of 1977, was it 3? mid-70s. You pluck a man out of that age and then put him around a bunch of, modern, independent women. He's not going to know how to deal with it. So, but I like how he's written. So, they sit down, they think about it, and they're like, well, maybe something, maybe Jimmy's up to this. They're like, no, we went and checked. Jimmy's not there either. So Roy's like, we need to do something. Like, yes, we are going to do something. Let's go talk to Brit. And he's just like, come on, do something. Let's quit talking. Let's see here. So basically the guys just sit around until morning. They're not doing anything. They start giving the old man random names. James T. Kirk, and then someone says Jean-Luc Picard, and Phillip doesn't know who that is, and he's like, oh, you just make me sad, Phillip. Let's see here. Let's see. Oh, okay. And then Todd appears. So anyway, a window opens up, basically like an old web browser window opens up, and it's Todd. And of course,
I'm picturing reboot where the window.
Oh yes, exactly. That's exactly what I thought too.
Reboot. I'm talking the old school reboot.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't bother watching it.
No.
Listen to the Epically Geeky show. So Todd appears and basically says how he got out and how he basically was like, he always heard that the best revenge was living well. So that's what he did. He travels to the future. He learns programming. He works on different games. He's made money. He's basically grown up, become, a pretty solid dude. And they're like, well, that's great. We're glad to hear that. And he goes, and then I thought, well, maybe I should try the other type of revenge. It's like, oh, you douchebag. And so he tells them he's created this quest and they have to go on this epic quest. And they're possibly going to die because that's how he's going to get his revenge. And he's like, you don't have your powers. So if you stay here, you're either going to starve or you're going to freeze to death. So at this point, this is where, okay, so let me just say this. I love in these previous books how we in the second book, we definitely learn more about and get more about the relationship between Martin and Phillip. And then, of course, Martin and Gwen. And we're introduced to Brit and we start getting that. This book is where we start fleshing out the characters of Gary and Jeff and Jimmy and so on. And I love that. I love the fact that we get this group together and we get to see them interact and stuff. So anyway, the old man asks, who's going to lead the group? They finally say, fine, Philip's going to lead the group. He says, who's going to be your number two? He says, after a second, he goes, well, I can't make him, if I make, who was it? If he made someone a leader, no, he ends up making Jeff the leader.
Yeah.
If he made Tyler the leader,
that's right.
He would kill Gary. And he wasn't gonna let what's his face, or not Gary. He was gonna kill Jimmy, and he wasn't gonna let Gary be leader. So he nominates Jeff. At which point the place basically starts to crumble. They all have to run for their lives, and Jeff falls to his death. And they're like, all right, so when does Jeff show back up? It's obviously a video game. He's like, no, he's dead. Dead? Or he's like, no, he's dead. He is dead. He is never coming back. And then Tyler's like, well, that's stupid. We're time travelers. We'll just go back and fix it. Which already starts to piss Todd off.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I love Tyler in this one.
His commentary is great.
He is my favorite character in this one.
Well, that's just lazy writing.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
You just see him going like.
The whole time, every time he points out something, I love it. And yes, I would love, and that's what I'm saying. I really enjoyed this book. Jumping ahead, I really enjoyed this book because of, like I said, the interaction between this group of characters. I love the other group that comes together as well because I love their interactions as well. But this group getting to kind of know, fleshing out the characters of particularly Tyler, but Tyler and Jimmy and so on, I love it. So. Let's see here. So, we're back at Brit's, both Brit and Brit the Younger's house. They tell him about what happened. They explain to Martin is thinking about taking copies of the shell to give them their powers. Brit tells them they're going to try this and probably not going to work, but go ahead and give it a shot. Meanwhile, back in this game area or whatever, the guys find a dead party. They loot the corpses for clothing and weapons. A wolf attacks Phil, and they manage to throw it off the mountain trail. They end up killing wolves basically by the same thing, and I love the fact that they very quickly figure out that these wolves are video game based because they all look the same, they growl the same, they attack the same way, and it's literally just like growl 1, 2, 3 lunge, and that's how you do it every single time.
Very basic.
But yeah, exactly. It's and they even say that they're like, this is very poorly written. Like not only is this a poorly written story, this is a poorly programmed game too. Like this is just shit all the way around. So they kill many wolves. They make camp. Jimmy's good at making a fire, and they end up realizing that the wolves will respawn for one that whenever they kill them. They finally get to actually kill a wolf instead of just throwing it off the mountain. And it leaves wolf jerky, and of course it tastes horrible. The wolf's final revenge, as they put it. And then Gwen, Brit, Martin, and Roy appear. They're standing on nothing, and they're like freaking the fuck out, but they're able to stand on something, and they realize that, oh, it's just like the visuals aren't here, but obviously they're solid ground here. Brit sends them some backpacks with a bunch of stuff that they need because obviously things didn't work out. So they basically walk past the old man because they can't give an answer that he'll understand. They all give their own names. And then there's some argument about that. Like, Roy is like, I'll lead. And they're like, no, could you please say that again? And then he says Martin. And then I think Gwen pipes up and he's like, he said, which man? And she's like, it doesn't matter. And of course, the character doesn't understand. They basically just walk past him. They find the dead hunting party. At first they think it's their friends, but then they realize it's not them. And then a wolf attacks Martin, and Martin does manage to kill it. And and he's feeling extremely proud of himself because this wolf's appeared out of nowhere and he's fucking killed it. And Gwen walks up and was like, wow, that looked really easy. And he's just like, but it was probably hard. He's just completely deflated, and I feel for the dude. So, let's see here. Roy and Brit start getting into it about men protecting the women. Oh, so yeah. So they're like, okay, well, it's a very narrow trail. So obviously, I'll be in the front, the kid will be in the back, and the women will be in the middle because we have to protect y'all. And this is where the friction really starts to pick up between Brit and Roy. Gwen is definitely feeling it. Like she's definitely more so, okay, this is just kind of how he is, kind of, and not letting it go. Brit's not having it. No. Brit's fucking in his face the whole time.
Triggered.
Yes.
I know that to college with a guy like that. He'd immigrated from Russia less than a year before, and we went on a camping trip. And he would not let any of us girls lift any of the food backpacks. He wouldn't let us lift any of the we couldn't do it.
He even he wouldn't let them carry the canoes.
Yeah, and we weren't allowed. We couldn't do it because we weren't strong enough. It was so irritating, and he wouldn't listen to our professor, who was a woman, because she was like, "Okay, you have to wear your life jacket." He's like,
"You don't know what you're talking about."
I never wear my life. I'm fine. I'm totally fine. She's like, "No, it's a legal thing." And he just refused to listen to her, and just did his own thing because that's the way he did it.
At least Roy was kind about it, and there's a reason behind it. This guy was just an asshole.
Yeah, it sounds like this dude was just an asshole. Sorry, the Sai's in the chat room. I haven't been able to keep up. So, hey, Sai. Let's see here. So, protecting the women. Okay, so the guys find this mine, and they talk to the lead miner, and he says that they need a canary to get the diluwine they need. Gary's like, dude, I think this is it right here, and literally picks up this ball, and they're like, would you, Gary, just fucking leave it alone, man. Just let the adults handle it. And so they get this information. Yeah, exactly. And they have to get it from an evil king. So they're like, yeah, sure, we'll take it. And everyone starts dancing and singing and like eating meat, and all of a sudden beer appears and everything. They're just like, well, this is well choreographed. There's where you're that's what it is, Jen. You need to be in a video game so that just random stuff will happen, like a kind of like your musical thing going. Anyway, let's see here. So the next morning they head off to the castle. They see the guards and they decide they're going to steal it from around back. They're like, we're going to try to sneak in the other way. And I love this part where they're like, well, how the fuck are we going to sneak in? And Gary's like, guys, I know the secret of the ninjas. And proceeds to basically just walk very slowly. And of course he's going slowly. Or what is he saying? Slowly or silently? Silently. Silent. And they're like, do we have to say silently the whole time that we're sneaking? Which, I think Phillip has a wise ass comment. It was like, guys, Gary knows the secret of the ninjas. Their ninja secret was to sneak. So he describes the technique. They get across the water. They climb the castle. They get in. Gary and Tyler basically. So there's this giant door. So this is clearly written from a video game standpoint. So there's a giant door. There's these two giant levers. Gary and Tyler basically hold open the doors while Phillip and Jimmy go in, and they have to solve this puzzle to try to find this canary. They work together, and whenever they find the canary, it's being there's two guys there. There's the king, and then there's the evil viceroy. And the evil viceroy is like burping in this mechanical canary, which I don't know about y'all, but I immediately thought of, what was his name? Bubo, the mechanical owl from Clash of the Titans. That's immediately what I thought. And so anyway, they get a good look, and it's a very odd, like it's not right. It's kind of uncanny valley version. The king is clearly Jimmy, and the viceroy is clearly, or the jester is clearly Phillip. And so they're like, I'll take the one, you take the other one. Gary goes over, like runs up to the king, takes his sword, and basically knocks him out with his sword. Like, hits him on the head, knocks him out. And as he's turning around to see how Phillip's doing, Phillip is literally chopping this doppelganger of Gary up with a fucking sword. Like he is going at it.
Of Jimmy.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
And Jimmy's just like, all right, I see how it is. He's like, but I thought that was the plan. No, I understand. It's fine. just grab the bird. Very clear as to what, Phillip's thought process is on this. So, when they come back out, we have this awesome conversation between Gary and Tyler as to who's the better captain, Kirk or Picard, which I thought was funny in itself. So, they grab the bottle of wine. Do what?
It's Picard.
Yeah. Okay, in all seriousness, if you're gonna serve on a ship, which one are you going on? Are you serving under Picard? I'm going under Picard. Yeah. Kirk's gonna get your ass killed.
Yes. And then he's gonna sleep with other women.
That's right. So they get it. They get the rock back to the miners. The miner takes the canary, hangs it up, and then proceeds to walk into the mine. They're like, don't you need the canary? That's why you need the canary, is to go into the mine.
That's just lazy writing.
That's just lazy writing. And proceeds to basically chop at a rock that was sitting right there at the entrance, the same rock that Gary found. And of course, Gary just fucking has a fit. And they're like, we're sorry, Gary. We just don't always listen, buddy. It's okay. And it's at this point, we'll take a break here. So thoughts up to this point. I think Cy is just being a jerk in the chat room. He said Kirk. Anyway, thoughts up to this point.
I thought it was funny. Fireworks are going off behind me, so don't mind me. Yeah, I thought it was pretty funny and an interesting take. And Todd's a fucking douche. Like, he's just the worst.
I liked that with this one, so far anyway, up to this point, you can see that Jimmy's being really truly honest in the way that he is sincerely sorry for what he did, and he's trying to make amends in any way that he can. realizing that that's not going to happen, he's just taking a step back and waiting for the other guys to see that he's being honest. I see that in up to this point anyway, and it's an interesting dynamic there. But that being said, I know Chris was kind of bored with the book.
Really?
I didn't like this one.
It's okay. That's fine. That's what.
Well,
that's
no,
what
but like looking back, like now that like we're reading the 5th book,
yes.
I mean, obviously it creates a bigger picture and it fills in this bigger story.
It did flesh things out.
Yeah, it did flesh things out now that we've read on it and stuff like that. But while we were listening to it, I was just like, Todd's such an ass.
We get it. Yes, let's move on.
Oh, I get it. He's stupid.
Can we get it out of the book now?
Yes. You know they're going to get there. You know Jeff's going to be fine.
It was almost like Todd was torturing us with the same bad game.
That's funny. Mandy, any thoughts up to this point?
I'm with you. I liked how it kind of fleshed out the buddies, you know, the side characters that we hadn't really gotten to know as well. But yeah, there was no magic in this one, so they kind of had to rely on their own. There was like a lot of like tinkering and maker stuff in this one, so it was different. And it was slow at parts, but I think that was part of the torture.
I didn't really think about the fact that there isn't. I mean, there's magic at the beginning and the end, but you're right. There's not really any magic in this one.
Well, video game based, which is fine.
Probably why I had a harder time with it is because I'm not a big
That's a good point. Yeah.
Quest video games, like I find them very boring.
And see, I have to stay away from them, otherwise I'd get sucked into them and not get anything done. So, so they get the dial of wine and they head off, and like 2 minutes later, the second group shows up. Go on.
I was gonna say the dial of wine is heavy as shit.
That's right.
Then they're trying to figure out how to carry this thing.
Have they already gotten the cursed cloak? Or
not yet.
Oh,
not yet.
Okay.
The cloak's coming up. The cloak's coming up.
That scene where they find it again, and never mind.
Yeah. We're not there. But yeah, so that dial of wine is heavy as shit.
Yes.
And they're trying to figure out how to carry it out, and they use the cart, don't they? No.
No, they carry it.
Sorry.
Did they carry it? I think they carried it because I think they were taking turns carrying it at this point.
That's right. Yes, they're carrying it.
So they're taking turns carrying it. So because there's several things they have to carry in this book, and they have their own distinct issues. So, so like 2 minutes later, the second group shows up. They see the birds already there, but they realize they still have to do that part of the quest. Meanwhile, the first group gets attacked by 3 wolves. They kill the wolf on Phil's back, so we're right there, Jen. Okay. And an hour later, 2 appear on top of the cloak. Like, literally, they appear on top of Phil's back. And so they kill the wolves, and there's this whole discussion about how Phil's like, I don't want to give up the cloak, but we killed these wolves somewhere else, so they shouldn't appear on the cloak. And they're like, no, Phil, they're going to appear back on the cloak because that's where the first one was killed. And this time it's not going to be 2, it's going to be 4. And he's like, well, what if I turn it inside out? And they're like, well, then you'll have 4 wolves inside the cloak with you. And Phil's just like,
well, maybe not. You don't know that.
Yeah, but this is like the most badass piece of clothing I've ever had. He's like, it's got the fur on it, and they're like, yeah, but
you look old.
Yeah, you don't look good. And then of course Gary has to open his mouth. He's like, who wants a Superman cape that looks like it's got bear fur on it? They're like, quit helping out, Gary. You're making it sound awesome. Which I have to say, when it's described like that, sounds kind of cool. Let's see here. Okay, and now previously I said in each one of these books there's a scene that I would love to see actually done in, as a TV film. This is part of that part. So they come across this house out in the middle of, it's kind of off the way. And as they get closer, they notice that there are several young women on the front porch. They're very shapely. They've got like the traditional, like you would think, medieval attire. Like
one's churning butter.
Very seductively. One's knitting very seductively, and that's funny as how it's described as very seductively. And then what was the other one doing? Churning butter.
She came out of. I thought she just came out on the porch.
No, there was a third one because remember the
she was washing clothes on a walk.
That's right. She was washing clothes.
She's washing clothes. Correct. That's right.
So they walk up, and of course they're all like, oh, hey, there's ladies here. So suck in the gut, put the shoulders back, and walk up, and they all kind of cough so they can get a deeper voice when they go talk to these ladies. And so they walk up, and oh my God, it looks like Gwen, or kind of Gwen, but not really Gwen. And so does the second. Oh my God, all three of them look like Gwen. And they're like, "What the hell is going on with this?"
With different
and it's at this point they're like, "Why does?" Or no, they had this discussion a little bit later, but they're like, "Why do they all look like Gwen? Like why?" Did he think we all had the hots for Gwen or something? And Gary's like, yeah, he thought we all had the hots for Gwen. Well, why do you think that?
Because we did.
I told him we all had the hots for Gwen. They're like, dude, not cool. It may have been the truth, but not cool, dude. So the Gwens, Gwenches. I'm sorry, they're later called. Yes, I love that term. The Gwenches. The Gwenches are like, we haven't seen a man in forever, and we have, satin sheets and plenty of bite-sized food, just like ridiculous. And of course, most of the three of the four guys, well, two of the guys, Gary and Tyler, are just like, listen, it's food. It looks, this is obviously a trap. As long as we keep our eyes open, we're fine. Phillip's not really having it, and of course, Gary's just like,
Gary's all in.
Let's go. Yeah.
Let's see how far this goes.
Yeah. So it's at this point, they hear a voice, and there's another voice, and he's like, "Oh, here it is. Here's the trap. It's the big beefy brothers are about to come out and beat our asses or something," and it's a fourth one. Now there was a blonde, a brunette, and a redhead, and out comes a fourth one with black hair, and slightly Asian looking.
It's the bad makings of a porn. Is what.
No, this is so porny right here. Yeah.
Porny.
Yeah. So they go in and they're having this discussion, and they're basically allowing themselves to be catered to, and of course Phillip's not having it. And Tyler tells him, he's like, "Look, dude, this is easy for you to take the high road on this. You have a stable girlfriend. The rest of us do not have a stable girlfriend. So." We're not going to let it go too far, of course. And he's like,
it's not real.
Yeah, we just won't tell Martin. And he's like, that's not Martin I'm worried about finding out about. And he was rightfully so for that one. So it's at this point, Gary is taken upstairs for his bath, and of course wants to get, as he puts it, his freak on. Which I love the fact that they're like, maybe that's why you have so many problems, is because you refer to it as getting your freak on. But he goes upstairs, and the scene on this is funny as hell. This is why he starts to, it starts to get very heated, and like he starts taking off his clothes, and he's like, it even mentions, he's like, he's taking off his clothes, and he's like, and like most people, when you're doing this, you start realizing, am I doing this wrong? Am I... is there a right way to do this? He's just not feeling right about it. Yeah. And so he starts, kissing on this Gwen, and that's when stuff goes south. She literally putrefies in his hands, and like the water, which was like clean and stuff, is now basically mud, like gunk and mud and crap and stuff. And he very quickly realized, like, she's like, that's what it was. He's like kind of like nibbling on her neck, and she's talking about, I will gnaw the meat from your bones. He's like, whatever you're into, baby. And at one point he's even like, I can make this work. And he's looking, he's like, I can't make this work.
He's so stupid to think that Todd would actually allow something like this.
Exactly.
Exactly.
They told him this is a trap. He knows it's a trap, but he's just so hard up. He doesn't care.
Literally.
But he figures out, he grabs his clothes and he figures out, like, if he takes a step backward, she lunges forward but won't attack him. If he takes a step forward, she kind of, like, goes back a little bit. And he's like, oh, man, this is the same type of crap as the rest of this stuff. So he literally walks downstairs, like, buckling his pants. And he's like, hey, guys, I think this was definitely a trap. And, of course, at this point, all the other ones have turned as well. Poor Jimmy is like...
All the food is rotten.
Poor Jimmy's like, I had something in my mouth and it turned to maggots. And, Anyway, so he goes downstairs and he's like, look, I don't think these things can hurt us. Like, they can't actually touch us. They sound big and bad or whatever. And of course, once again, this is just poor writing. And so it's at this point that Todd shows up on a video screen again, and they're just like, listen, man, this sucks, dude. Like, tell you what, here's what we're going to do, Todd. We're just going to,
stay the night.
Yeah, we're just going to stay the night. We're going to, put the Gwenches in a room back over there and shut the door. We're going to spend the night. And we'll be off tomorrow morning. And then I think Jimmy has the idea. He's like, hey, what if we could, like, they do have a cart, because they're like, what if we could hook the Gwenches up to the cart and they could pull the rock for us?
That's right.
And Todd is just like, no. He's pissed that they're basically finding a way to break his game. So he sets the place on fire. All the Gwenches go up in fire. Pretty much everything goes up in fire. So all the guys run out. Poor Phillip does not have anything. He's doesn't even have his robe and has to grab whatever's on the coat rack on his way out. Because, he had to give up his cloak because of the wolves. And they run out, and then, of course, they very quickly realize that the rock is sitting next to it, so they have to run back over, grab the rock, pull it across. And they're like, well, at least we'll sleep warm tonight. And I think it says, like a light switch being flipped, all the fire goes out. And they're just like, fuck you, Todd. You can't even give us that.
Talking.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Todd's listening to every word you say. Just stop talking.
Yes, exactly. And so Phillip has to end up wearing a fur coat. Now, this is not a fur. This is a fur, like a woman's fur coat. So it talks about as he's putting it on, and every time he moves, its seams are tearing, and he's just like, oh, this sucks. Meanwhile, the second group is back at the castle. They see the soldiers, and Martin and Roy are like, okay, this is how we're going to do it. The women stay back here, and we're going to go take care of this. And, of course, the women are like, well, why are y'all taking care of this? What are y'all doing? They're like, don't worry about it. We got it. And it's at this point Martin, kind of, levels with Roy. He's like, listen, Roy, the women really think you're treating them badly. He's like, I'm not. I'm trying to protect them. They're women. He's like, yes, I understand this. But they don't really need your protection. Like, just treat them as equals. And he's like, I don't treat my equals very well. He goes, well, that's fine too. Just treat them that way. Like, if you treat them like shit, but you treat everyone like shit, then at least they're on par with everyone else. That's where they want to be. So, they had this conversation. They get up to the guards, and Martin's like, all right, follow my lead. And he's like, well, what are you going to do? And he literally, like, walks up and, like, I think he hits one of the guards or something and tells him, run. And, of course, what's his name, has already, like, turned around and started running. And they basically have the guards chasing them back, video game terminology, a train. They're pulling a train. They run around the corner, and the girls have seen what's going on, and they proceed to kill, like, the first three guards very quickly. They jump back in line with the guys, and there are several guards there, and they're like, all right, we're going to have to split up. Let's just hope we get through this. And then they very quickly realize, oh, the guards are just like the wolves, and they only attack one at a time.
So it was so one thing that we forgot to mention was the reason why they couldn't go the same route that the other guys did was because they can't see the rocks. So right. as the guys were coming out of the rock, or with the bird, the original crew, right, when they came out of the castle, every time they stepped on one of the rocks, just before they left off that rock, it would start falling. So, it was right after they jumped, because but it was still there, solid, and everything was still there. It just looked like it fell.
But they figured it out, right? Like.
Yeah,
Tyler figures it out halfway through and is like literally just like taking his time. He's like, guys, don't worry about it. I got this.
It's fine. But so the next group, right? The group of Roy and Brit and Gwen and Martin can't see those rocks because they're invisible.
That's a good point.
Because it hasn't reset. So that's why they're trying to go through the guards. Because they go looking for another path and can't find one.
They're like, oh, if only there was a way to go this back way.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I forgot about that. I'm glad you mentioned that because it goes even further to show how badly this simulation that they've been put in is programmed. Like the rocks don't fall until literally they leap off. The guards and the wolves can only attack one at a time, which if you play video games, you know that's been a trope forever.
Can I say something? I don't think we touched on this, but when Martin and company show up, like, he doesn't know they're there, right, Todd? Because he doesn't expect anybody else to have been around the other guys, I guess. He doesn't know about Martin or Roy or even the Brits. He just knows Gwen, but, like, he doesn't know Gwen was a wizard either, right? So, like, they're doing all this, and Todd is completely oblivious that there's anyone following the other guys because he's only watching them.
You're absolutely right, and that's a really good point that we forgot to make. Todd does not realize that this second group is in there, so all of the traps and stuff for the most part are not resetting. Like a few things have reset, like the old man reset, and then of course they're having to fight the wolves that come up, and a few other things reset. But for the most part, like the landscape and stuff that ends up changing, none of that changes. It's like once it's triggered, it's done.
But even the guy, the old man, when he resets, he's just repeating the same line, and he doesn't.
And is standing over nothing.
Recognize, their cues. So it's funny because it's just the characters. What are they called? The regulars that just only NPCs. React to specific things. Yeah.
Yeah, the NPCs.
Like in Jumanji.
Yes.
Jumanji. The fate of Jumanji is in your hands.
So they get Oban. So they get into the castle. They pull all these guards. Brit and Roy have to hold the door open. Gwen and Martin go in and solve the puzzle, and they have and I like the conversation they have about they have to do this puzzle to open this door, and of course Martin says, "Oh, it's like Tomb Raider," and then she says, "Well, I what about what's the one with Nathan Drake? It's I cannot remember the name of that game. Anyway, she says she prefers playing that game because she's a chick and she likes watching a dude do it. And he's like, well, I'm a guy and I, watching a chick do it. So, but anyway, so they get out. Roy and Brit kind of have a little bit of a coming to Jesus moment. They're having a conversation. You can tell Roy is trying to open up a little bit more, and Brit is trying as well because she's asking him questions about the SR-77 and the Blackbird, and he's telling her about that. But they get the bird. They get back to the miners. The bird is messed up. They play
a trick on them, like.
Yes, they were like they heard them coming, and then they act like they're like dying, holding on to these. They're like, hurry, we can't hold it any longer. And of course, they run out real quick, and they're like, afterwards they're like, why didn't you just lean your back on? And he's like, you don't understand what we went through. That was the most horrible thing. And then Brit says, yeah, it was so bad Roy even broke down into tears. And if a big, strong man like Roy broke down into tears, it was really bad. And he's like, I thought we weren't going to talk about that, Brit. Because he couldn't get, he didn't want to, give up the joke. So, but they get the bird back. The bird is messed up. This version of the bird is not moving. It's just like hung in space. It's just sitting there. Right. They get back. Right. They give the guy. What's going on?
What are you doing?
I'm putting the kids to bed, but I wanted to say excited. I absolutely love that Roy and Brett did that. I thought it was hilarious. It's like, come on, you gotta hurry up, my kid is gonna slip, and they're running. I love that part. Anyway, yeah, I gotta go.
They give the bird to the miner. He literally knocks the working bird off and like puts the non-working bird up there. Walks over, proceeds to mine something that's not there, and then hands them this invisible ball.
It's also heavy.
Brit, I think, goes to grab it and realizes it's super heavy. Like drops on I think Martin's foot and hit. they're trying to figure out what the hell they're going to do with it. So Brit sits on it, and they're trying to figure out what are they going to do, how are they going to handle this, and they go,
Only we had a cart.
or if only we had something that we could make it so that we could see this invisible thing. What's the most visible thing that we have? Hey, Martin, can I borrow your wizard robe? And so they're like, basically his shimmering silver robe is wrapped around it, and it looks like the most messed up disco ball, but at least they can see the damn thing. And so they're able to do it. Now, before they go, they end up working out. They take Martin's staff and Roy's pole cue, and they fashion a I can't remember what it's called, a trundle or whatever. And so they put the ball on it, and so that two people can carry it along with them. So one person in front, one person in back. And they are taking turns going, using it. And they finally convince Roy, hey, let the ladies help out with it. So they're able to go along. And Roy starts making these comments about how well that it's made. And I wonder if this is true. He makes this comment about how the first spacesuits were all sewn together by women because they were used to sewing multiple layers of synthetics together. Makes sense to me.
Yeah, especially given.
So, can y'all still hear me?
Yeah.
Or am I out? Okay. It just kind of got quiet. Anyway, so the guys get back to town. Let's see. With the all right. So our first group makes it to the next town. They have the dial wine, and they meet the blacksmith. And the blacksmith is an NPC, and he just. They want to interact with him with.
Where'd he go?
No. We've definitely lost him this time.
Oh no.
What do we do without Eugene?
I'm back.
Eugene, just because I put kids
well,
to
I
bed.
hear you, but I don't see you.
There you are.
There I am.
Okay.
I knew something was happening because it started getting really quiet. So they get to this town, and they have to mess with the blacksmith, and the blacksmith. Oh, the blacksmith.
He's so funny.
This was,
The black. Go on.
It's
What were you gonna say?
infuriatingly funny.
Yes.
Oh, it's funny as shit.
So the blacksmith's like, okay, so here's what I need y'all to do. I can make you your weapon. I just need the dial of wine. They're like, well, we got the dial of wine. It's like, okay. Which was funny because they started having the conversation, and like they figured out it doesn't really matter what they say. And so like Tyler's like, I got this. And he's like, but I need this mysterious thing. We got the rock. But if anyone could, we got the rock. And that's all he says. So they end up taking the rock, and he's like, all right, well, the first thing I need is bricks. And they're like, okay. So he sends them out to go get bricks, and they come back, and they've got bricks, and they're hot and they're tired. And he's like, all right, now I need clay. So he sends them out to the clay pit, and they come back, and they're all covered with clay, and they're just like, God, this sucks.
Yeah, I'm going to say, parts of this reminded me of Breath of the Wild.
Really?
Having to go forage after certain things, and it's like, dear God, seriously?
Yes. This is one of those parts that I think most people have a problem. I don't mind the occasional fetch quest in a video game. I hate when it's multiple fetch quests, one right after another. I need this. Now I need this. Now I need this.
Give me the list of
of
everything. Sorry, Jeff.
He's just making him work,
Well, yeah, but for me, it's give me the whole list at what you need so I can go and collect everything and come back to you at once. Don't make me coming back to you time after time after time.
Absolutely. So let's see here. So he tells them that they have to build a kiln, and so they're like, okay. So they start to build this kiln, and literally right before they put the last thing on, they're like, Jimmy, what are you doing? He's over sitting underneath the tree. He's like, I ain't doing this shit yet. And they're like, after a second, they understand. Oh, he's right. If we don't do this, we don't complete this yet, we can't move on to the next thing. So we could take a break. So they all sit around the tree. I think they even sleep overnight or something like that. They at least take a long break and kind of, recuperate.
They're rested.
Yeah. And so they slap the last thing on this kiln. And of course, the blacksmith's like, this is great. And he starts getting it set up or whatever. And he's like, he's like, The next thing we need is tomorrow. Get good rest tonight, guys. Tomorrow, y'all are gonna kill a monster and get the next thing. And they're like, all right, good night, see you tomorrow. What? Didn't say anything about killing no fucking monster. And
his voice, I love the voice he does for this guy.
Yeah,
I do too.
It's like all of them, but you
know. So the next day they have to fight something, and all they know, they're standing in the middle of the road, basically like gunslingers, and like it's just traditional video game stuff. People are running across the road. You'll hear a cat meow or whatever, a dog bark. People run back. People are looking through windows. It's just, he obviously plays video games because this is so well done. And they start discussing, what is it we're going to fight? And they're like, I don't know. All we know, it has to have bones. And they're like, well, that doesn't really fucking narrow it down. And he's like, well, it could be a slug. You don't want to fight a giant slug, do you? He's like, well, no, not really. And it's at this point, this woman runs across the street. She starts to run back, and all of a sudden she trips and disappears underneath the ground. And they're just like, oh shit, it's happening. What's happening? What's gonna happen? And the ground starts to peel up, and a giant spider comes out. And Tyler loses his shit.
Come on, man. Spider doesn't even have bones. It's got an exoskeleton. What are you doing, man? That's just lazy writing.
And Todd appears. He's like, "What? Do you not like spiders? Are you afraid of spiders?" And he's like, "No, they've been done to death. The reason why you keep doing it is because it's the first thing that came to your mind." And they're he is berating him constantly. He's like, you've seen this shit over and over again. And he's like, no, it's different this time. Yeah, this is a trapdoor spider. No one does a trapdoor spider. He's like, doesn't fucking matter. It's going to do the same shit anyway. It's going to shoot webs. And he's like, well, it might do something else. And they're like, what, kung fu? Is the spider going to do kung fu? And then, of course, they're like, ooh, I'd like to see a spider do kung fu. That'd be awesome. Of course, they both. Oh, that was funny because I think Phil makes that comment and literally turns around, and both Todd and Tyler are staring at him like, "Shut the fuck up." So he winks out of existence, and the spider just stands there for a second, and then it looks like the wind is blowing, and it's all these little spiders, and they're like, "Oh shit!" Now, I don't like spiders. Okay, once we get up to about this size, that's problematic. These things are the size of kittens, as he puts it. My wife always says if she actually ever saw a tornado, she'd probably just die right then and there. This might happen for me. I might have just died. I might have just went, well, that's it for me.
So spiders are your snakes. If you were
snakes too. I don't fucking deal with snakes.
All right, never mind.
No, both of them.
I was going to say Indiana Jones, right? Why did I gotta be
exactly? So all four guys basically just run, and like they just start running wherever. Two of the guys start climbing up on some buildings. Jimmy runs up and starts climbing a tree. Tyler really can't go anywhere. He's basically surrounded by it, and he's just like, well, this is it. I'm done for it. And he starts to hear this like chittering sound, and he's looking around, and he sees one of the spiders kind of bend down and attack, and he chops it out of the air. And then he hears a chittering sound, and he looks and he finds the next one, and he chops it, and he's just like, guys, they attack one at a time, just like the fucking wolves and the soldiers and everything else. We got this shit.
Did we mention, by the way, I'm sorry, I know we keep going back. Did we mention that there was the cliff wolves, and then there was the wood wolves?
No, we didn't.
And then there was
the water wolves.
Mm-hmm. The water wolves. The best wolves are still to come, though. The cliff wolves are still the best. God, I love that scene. And I forgot about that. I'm so glad you brought up the different types of wolves, which is literally just a wolf that just appears somewhere else.
Diversity in the script.
You could say that. But so the giant spider ends up like basically kind of, attacking Tyler. It basically kind of gets him webbed up or whatever. Jimmy figures out that, they're only attacking one at a time, jumps out of the tree and goes after the giant spider and basically hacks off one of its legs, saving Tyler in the process. He has it follow him. It gets by, Phillip calls him over because he sees what he's done. He basically jumps off the building, hacks off another leg. They get it to slowly but surely move over to where, not Todd, what's his face? Gary is. Gary does the same thing, and they basically knock off 3 legs on one side of the spider. So the spider's pretty much kind of like done for at this point. So they walk up and all basically stab it in the eyes, and it dies for the most part. And all the little spiders all just kind of fall down. The big spider falls down or whatever. And they're like, well, we got that taken care of. And they're like, nope, this is a video game. This thing's got at least one more round in it. So Jimmy and Phillip turn around and pronounce, well, the spider is dead. We've won this one, and start to walk off. And sure enough, the thing starts to move again. And then Jimmy's just like, oh, wait, hold on. I got this. And walks up and like grabs the sword and just like twists it and kills it. And it's at this point that they know it's dead because like all good video game characters, it starts to fade away. And there's a spider skeleton. And of course, Tyler goes off again.
What do you mean there's a spider skeleton?
This is something no one has ever seen before. We almost forgot there's that conversation of how they are having an argument of how octopuses are not the spider of the ocean.
I forgot about that.
Tyler's having a breakdown. He's like, "What do you mean they're not the thing? They've got 8 legs." He's almost in tears. He's so mad.
Probably had a rough time.
He's having a rough time at this one. So let's see here. So they kill it. The guys go back. They throw the rock, or they throw the bone in there into the kiln, and they start asking questions. They're like, everything up to this point in the quest has been fairly like straightforward. Why is it all of a sudden we're like so entrenched in this, detail crap? And Tyler's like, well, obviously he thinks, blacksmithing is cool. He's like, it is kind of cool, but obviously, Todd's got a thing for blacksmithing. So,
everything else was very vague.
Yes, everything was very vague.
Everything was very vague for how it was done, except for the blacksmithing portion.
So the guys have to start working the bellows, and they play it, and they start playing a guy. They have to work the bellows to get the temperature up on, to melt this rock. And they start playing a game, and it's called Desert Island Todd. And it's basically, it's you and Todd on a desert island, and you have 3 items to torture him. And none of them are far enough in the future to know what waterboarding is, but Jimmy did. So he ends up winning it, but kind of at a cost. And they have a breakdown at this point, and he's like, he tells Tyler, he's like, look, let's just get this out here. I'm sorry. I will always be sorry. I can never make up for what I did to you in that town. All I can do is just keep living. I'm never going to stop being sorry, but I will stop telling you I'm sorry every time I see you. And Tyler's just kind of like, he has an argument with him, but he kind of understands they're at a stalemate. Like it's become obvious that we don't trust you. We can't let you go anywhere, but we don't also want you out of our sight. So we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't. And
we don't want you around, but we can't keep you out of our sight. Yeah,
exactly. So they kind of come to a little bit of an understanding with that. So let's see here. So while working the bellows. Okay, so the second group finds okay, so here's the other part that I want to see done as a TV show, and it's very short. The other group finds the cabin.
The burnt down cabin.
The burnt down cabin, but there are still 3 women that are working on the front porch, and Gwen goes up, and when she sees one of them, she just exactly. I love Roy's response to this. Like, he turns around, he's just like, I feel I need to apologize for you.
For you.
He doesn't know how to handle it. Martin, of course, is just like, okay, all right.
Oh, Martin's in an impossible situation here, though.
And okay, and I love the
question she asks him later. There's no way to answer.
And the question is, did you find them attractive? And that is, and like he said, that is the Kobayashi Maru of questions. What am I supposed to say? No, I did not find the women that look almost exactly like you attractive. What kind of answer is that? You can't give that answer. You also can't say, yes, I found them attractive to your girlfriend. That's not going to work either. Like, yeah. But yeah, she totally screwed him with that question. So, but she understood, and he explained it. I have to say, Martin did a good job of explaining why I can't answer that question, or if I do, either way is wrong. So, but then Brit kind of helps him out and is like, listen, I understand, obviously, the reason why they all look like you is because you're an attractive girl. And she's like, well, of course, coming from another woman, thank you. That's a compliment. And, so they're like, nope, not dealing with this. We're moving on. And they're like, okay, no questions asked. Even though you could tell some of them were like, maybe we could get some supplies here or something else. They did notice that the guys' robes were the ones being washed. And, of course, that's a little bit of a question. Why were the guys... Okay, number one, the guys were here, but why did they take their robes off? Exactly. So that's interesting.
So what was weird for me was I understand that the cabin reset. Didn't reset, right? Like, it was still burned out. But the part that I kind of was confused is why are the Gwenches back to normal?
Okay, I got to thinking about this earlier from what Jennifer said, and it didn't hit me till just now. Characters, NPCs reset. When you kill a character or something like that, it comes back. Whether it be the soldiers, the Gwenches, wolves, so on and so forth.
Fair enough. Okay.
Physical features don't. So like the first drop off that they were on, that didn't come back. The rocks, like you said, didn't come back. So obviously physical features don't reset, but for whatever reason NPCs do. So
fair enough. That works.
Fair enough. And I think it stays that way throughout the rest of the book. So I think I don't think there was a logic issue there. So
yep.
So the first group was working the bellows and the hammers to forge this long sword that ends up becoming the Mobius blade. And it's basically a blade that spins and twists around and literally has no handle. It's got one spot where there's a little bit of a twist where you can kind of maybe touch it, and it's so sharp, anything it touches immediately cuts. And this is the one thing Tyler actually finds kind of cool. But before, and I didn't really mention it here, but before they get to that part, the first thing is they knock out the dial wine. The blacksmith turns it into something, and when they realize what it is, they're all put out because it's an anvil, and they're like, "Are we fucking Wile E. Coyote? Are we going to be? What are we doing here? Are we hunting roadrunners?" And he's like, "No, I need this to make the weapon." But and during this process, they have to do the quench. They have to cool the metal. And someone's loud mouth mentions that why are they using like motor oil? That wouldn't have been period accurate. He's like, well, they would have either had to use water or they would have had to use pee. And of course,
Tyler pops a window.
Todd gets the idea.
That's a great idea. Thanks for that. A couple changes later.
And I love the fact that the second time they do it, he makes them pee on this blade to cool it. But they note the fact that he's reusing dialogue from the blacksmith, and he doesn't finish the last syllable on in the last word when he pauses. And so once they're doing it, and he makes them like basically breathe in the pee smell, unfortunately. And so once that's done, literally whenever Inchgower, I think is the blacksmith's name, when he literally comes back to life and starts talking, the first thing out of his mouth is the last syllable of the last word, and then he starts going in there like, God, this is so poorly written, like Jesus. So anyway, so he gives them the Mobius blade. They're trying to figure out how to carry the thing, and they basically figure out everyone has to kind of carry it like about like this. So there's a guy there's a guy in the front taking care of wolves. There's two guys on the side carrying it, and the back guy's just kind of holding onto it at roughly neck level. So they're constantly yelling at each other, "Don't stop! Don't stop!" Because I don't want to be decapitated.
They have to pinch it, right?
That's right. They have to. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're all pinching it because it's technically a sword in the way that it only has one edge all the way around. All the way around. The inside and the outside, and it's.
No, like it'd be great to have a cart to carry this with right now.
Exactly.
They walk right by the fucking cart.
Yes.
Yep.
And they warn him about they have to take it to the wastelands and to deal with sand wolves and the dreaded elemental. Yes. The second group get to town. They meet Inchgower, and they're like, you know what? We need to make up some time. We don't know how far ahead the guys are. We need to make up some time. And they have a debate. If we don't do this quest, we may not have something we need later on that we need to keep going. And they're like, but we've got to catch up to the guys. And they kind of take a vote and decide it's worth it. We're going to go ahead and skip this quest. We're going to see if we can catch up to the guys. And they get a little further down the road.
They drop the invisible dial-a-wine.
They drop the invisible dial-a-wine. They get a little further down the road, and I think Roy's the one that has the idea. And he's like, wait a minute, I saw something. This might work. So they go back into town, and they find the cart.
Sorry, I jumped ahead.
Exactly. No. It's fine. And so they go back into town. They find the cart and they start doing some work on it. The first group meets up with the elemental. Okay, well, the first group talks about the wolves. They're like, they should be hard to deal with, except for the fact that the draw distance in a video game on this one is not that far. So literally, you should be able to see the wolf coming from miles away. But it just kind of appears a little ways off because it's that poorly programmed. So they're dealing with that, and they end up finding the elemental. And the elemental is basically just this big sand creature, and it starts chasing Phillip around, and it breaks his arm, unfortunately. They end up running around and then get it into a puddle, and it turns into muck, and then they've basically defeated it at this point. But Phillip's got a broke arm, and they're like, okay, well, this kind of really sucks. They keep pushing forward. Second group, on the other hand, has modified a cart, and it's at this point that they've started working together. And so Roy, being an engineer, has figured out how to, kind of make it a little more sturdy or whatever. And they figured out a braking system on it, and they figured out a way to kind of steer it. And so they're basically kind of, it says they're only going 20, 25 miles per hour, maybe at the maximum. But in an open air cart, that would still be kind of scary. So they take off in this cart. Let's see here. First group meets up with the elemental. Okay, second group. First group makes their way down, and they're okay. So they finally get to the chasm of certain doom, and there's some conversation about that. And they're trying to figure out how they're going to make their way down this chasm, holding the freaking blade, because they can't just throw it down there. And they're attacked by cliff wolves, and these are the best wolves, because these wolves literally appear out of nothing and just fall to their deaths. And of course they laugh the entire way because they're like it would have been sad and made us feel bad if we heard the wolf like whining as it was falling to its death, but it's literally just
ready to pounce.
Exactly. It's so poorly written. The first group has to get off the cart because the hills have quit. They're in the sand. They find the sand elemental. They manage to run it through the same little swampy area. And then they get an idea. And it's at this point that Roy comes up with a way to basically create a panel on the back of it. I think Gwen is not sure about this shit at all. She's like, I don't know about this, guys. This sounds like a really stupid idea. And Britt's actually on Roy's side. She's like, he's an engineer. He worked on the freaking Blackbird. I trust his opinion on this. And she came up with the idea for the brakes, and he's like, and I trust her on the brakes. And she's like, I liked it better when you two were fighting. So, of course, poor Martin has to pull the elemental, but the elemental follows them. They all get in the cart, and the elemental pushes them along the way. The first group gets down to the bottom of the chasm. They're basically kind of like taking a break. It's nighttime, and the chasm is filled with a river of lava, to which Tyler, of course, points out, number one, lava doesn't flow that way. Number two, it wouldn't even cut a chasm. It would keep adding rock. This is the stupidest shit ever.
Scientifically inaccurate.
Oh my god, yes. So they all fall asleep, and all of a sudden something falls out of nowhere and into the lava, and it all wakes them up. Flashback to the second group. They basically all have to hop off of the cart as the elemental pushes it over into the chasm and follows it in. The first group sees the elemental and is like, wow, that stupid thing, followed us all the way here. What's the chances of that? And they're like, where the fuck did the cart come from? And it's at that point Gary's like, oh yeah, the cart back. Oh, and they're almost about to beat him to death. And he's like, it wouldn't have worked, guys, because it was an ox cart. We didn't have an ox. And they're just like, God, you are fucking.
Oh my god.
And I love the fact
he didn't speak up.
Yes, I love the fact that Martin basically barely is hanging off to the onto the cliff. pulls his way back up, and the first thing he says is, "I am Tiberius." Yeah. I am James Tiberius Kirk. So anyway, so the first group picks up the Mobius blade, makes their way to this area they're supposed to be. Oh, so that's something we forgot about. So they've been passing a pen and paper back and forth to each other, trying to come up with a plan. And basically, when it gets to Jimmy, he uses up like all of the paper, going through this elaborate explanation. And the best thing he can come up with is, whatever Todd says to do, don't do that. And they're just like, great plan, dude. Thanks for that. So they end up getting to where they're supposed to take the Mobius blade. There's this light shining down, and they basically chunk it over to where it's supposed to be. The ground opens up below them, and they fall in. And it's this basically half dome of pure white. And Todd's in there. And he's over in this little corner. And it's like wood paneling. It looks like, it sounds like the worst fucking room ever. He's over in this thing, and he's like, "Hey guys, I'll be with you in just a second," and then appears over next to them with a tablet, and basically does his first trick back to them again. So he basically locks all of them together, or basically has them locked where they can't move, they can't speak unless he allows them to, and there's several funny scenes where he's monologuing, as they'd say in The Incredibles. He's monologuing and asks them a question. Of course, they can't say anything, so he has to unlock them. Then they all, start kind of, trash talking him or whatever. And then he pulls the Mobius blade in and starts it on Fuku's pendulum, which it basically keeps going back and forth. And there's a whole explanation of this, which was funny in itself. But it ends up cutting off Gary's foot. And they're all freaked out, and he's like, "Listen, I'm just basically going to kind of let y'all just sit and chill, and then it's going to slowly carve you up like lunch meat, and you're all going to bleed out and die." Gary's going to be first,
right? Don't they?
No, they bleed. He was bleeding, but he cut off the circulation so he wouldn't bleed to death first. So
yeah.
And it's at this point, all of a sudden, he gets hit in the head by something, and turns around. Flashback to the second group. They followed him in. They saw what was going on. I love this conversation of, there's this hole. What are we going to do? Well, we need to figure out what's going on with it. Well, let's not do anything stupid like stick our head down into it, like Martin's doing right now. Martin's already done it, and he's like, there are 4 guys down there, and there's a 5th guy, but I don't think it's. I don't think it's what's his name? And it looks like Gary's missing a foot. Like, it's weird. So they're like, well, what are we going to do? So they all said, the 3 adults, the Brit and Gwen and Roy, are trying to figure out what they're going to do, and they're just like, I don't know. What do we do? We're running out of time. Martin, what do we do? And he's like, right, we're going to jump down in the hole, and we're going to figure it out. And they're like, what? And he's already jumped.
Diversion.
Exactly. So the plan is he throws his shoe, hits Todd in the back of the head, and distracts him, while Britt slowly but surely makes her way out and around on the side over to the computer to try to unlock him. There's this hilarious scene where, while Todd's monologuing, the guys keep looking away from him and pissing him off because they keep looking at the other group. He sees them. He decides he's going to try to kill them. He causes the first group to basically become soldiers and to fight the second group. But once again, because it's so poorly programmed, they're very easily dodging it, except for Phillip, who's being taken control of by Todd and has like a little like thing over his head, like the fucking Sims.
Yep. And this is, I felt so bad for Phillip because his arm's broken, and he's just swinging away with a broken arm, forced to do it. Oh,
yes.
Pain.
That seemed like that'd be painful. And it's at this point he realizes that I can't remember exactly what happened. I'm kind of going off the seat of my pants here. Britt ends up getting to the computer, and the only one that she can find a way to unlock is Jimmy. And she's like, nah, anyone but Jimmy. But she has to do what she has to do. Yeah. So she unlocks Jimmy. Todd finds out what's going on, and Jimmy disappears. Jimmy recites a spell and just disappears, and they're like,
well,
what the fuck spell was that?
Doesn't Phillip say to him, like, don't you screw us?
Oh, yeah. Phillip says, don't screw us. Yeah. And Jimmy disappears. And they're just like, what? I don't know that spell. He shouldn't have had that spell. What spell was that? Todd realizes he needs to get up and like take care of Brit. He turns off the computer and is about to smash her in the head with a tablet when he freezes. And it's at this point, Jimmy reappears. And Jimmy has him locked up. And proceeds
in a new suit.
in a new suit and a haircut and stuff. And they're like, where the fuck have you been? He's like, well, I went back and I went to talk to Brit the Elder. And of course, Brit's like, I hope you better not have heard her. He's like, no, I went to her for advice. Like, what else was I going to do? And they're like, but you had time to get a new suit and a haircut. He's like, well, I was going to go meet with a lady. I didn't want to end up looking like garbage. Like, you got to look respectable. But anyway, so he medevacs Gary out and sends him to see the doctor, and starts going on this monologue about what he's going to do with Todd. And he's like, listen, you obviously aren't getting this. You came back for us. And everyone else is like, you can't kill him. He's like, no, y'all can't kill him.
But I can.
But I can. And proceeds to kill Todd. And, kind of, messes with everybody. And then he proceeds to say, well, listen, I understand where I now sit with you people. Y'all don't want me here. You can't let me go anywhere else. It's just best for me if I die. And they're like, all right, go ahead. We know you're not really going to do it. Like, Phillip has this long, drawn-out conversation. Go ahead. We're going to track you down because we know you're not really dead. And he essentially, he makes it seem like he's dead.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about later on.
And there's a little Jimmy tombstone where he...
That's right. Jimmy Tombstone appears. Tyler gets his powers back, gets everyone back. And so... let's see here. So, so he takes Todd away. He has to bring him back to get the password so they know exactly what's happened. He seemingly kills Todd, seemingly kills himself. We flash back to the beginning of the story where Jeff is falling, and they overclock his brain to slow him down and basically throw a dummy in there so that Todd would see the dummy fall. They pull out Jeff, and he's like, so how long has it been? It's like, it's been about 3 months. We wanted to make sure he got it right. And they're like, so what all's happened? And Martin's like, Gwen moved in with me, and it's awesome. And Gary's like, I have a robot foot.
Which he can change to whatever he wants.
Which he can change to a dragon foot or a skeleton foot. And he's like, I like the skeleton foot or the robot foot because I'll take what looks like human skulls and I'll crush them. And he's like, oh, like Terminator, that's awesome. I like the fact that it also points out that their robes now look different because most of their robes were messed up. So like Phillip's robe has a little bit of fur somewhere on it, and like but anyway, so they go back. Everyone seems happy to seeing, everything seems to be pretty well. And then we go back to the future, and it's sitting in Rio, I believe. We're sitting in Rio, and Todd's there with Jimmy, and Jimmy's like, listen, I'm trying to become the best person I can be. I can tell you what, past Jimmy would have done with you, and I can tell you what future Jimmy wants to be able to do with you, but I got to figure out what present Jimmy's going to do. And he's like, well, I don't know what it is. And you can tell Todd is just not getting it. He does not understand. He's just not capable of understanding this. And Jimmy kills him. And I think this one's for real. I think this is it.
I think he is deleted completely.
Yes.
Just gone.
And that's where we end off with the third book. So, thoughts. Start with go on, Ray. You know you want to.
So about partway through, this was probably my least favorite book.
Okay.
And then by the end of it, I'm like, yeah, it's at least a continuation of the story, which I'm fine with. it did flesh out some characters that I really enjoyed. I'd like to see more of Tyler, but you don't really get a lot of him in the next one. Not to get any spoilery or anything like that. It was an interesting story. I am really interested where they go with Jimmy, and I know that like where we're at with that, and I'll leave it at that. It's going to be interesting. I don't know. This one was a struggle to get through because of how slow it was at times, and that was the only part. Was there was times where I was like, okay, I get it. It's repetitive. Yep, let's go. So that's what I mean. Like, Todd was even torturing us with how bad his game was written. So.
Right. Chris, thoughts?
I liked it because it was just completing more of the story, more of the world, and the universe that the book is created in. And I liked that. It just, I don't like quest games, and it for me, because we were listening to it, there were whole chunks where I just was not listening, and I'm like, wait a minute, what happened? What?
And I have to go back. I had to go back and explain it to her.
Sometimes it was far enough back, so I'm like, we're not there yet. And
we missed a whole chapter.
The kids are like, yeah, Mom, we really listen to this, because I had totally stopped paying attention. I was just totally zoned out because it got a little bit bogged down for me. But I'm glad they fleshed out some of the characters. I still don't understand why Martin and Gwen are together.
That's more on Gwen than him, though.
I know,
anyway,
but I don't get it. Anyways, but it was good overall.
You think Gwen should end up? Do you think Gwen should find someone better? Is that what your problem is, or do you think they're just incompatible?
I think Martin should find somebody better. I think because Gwen's got a lot of hang-ups, and she's, for whatever reason, either she's scared or she just doesn't really want a relationship. Maybe she thinks she's just supposed to,
and she doesn't want to talk about any of it.
And she doesn't want to talk about anything. So I think Martin is really excited about her, and she's just not as excited about him.
I can see that. Yep. Mandy, thoughts?
I liked Jimmy, the way Jimmy was developed in this book.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was kind of his book. And he's an interesting villain, and he's not really a villain. Todd's the villain. But so you see kind of like two different versions of evil. Like Jimmy accidentally killed people. Todd clearly enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So I really like Jimmy now, and I feel like I'm kind of betraying Phillip at this point because Jimmy was the interesting one for me in this book. So I hope he comes back. It kind of sounds like he will. So I'm happy about that. I was a little tortured, like when the second group decided not to do the whole thing with the blacksmith. I was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Everything they went through, we had to go through twice, and I'm just like, okay, come on. But maybe if I were more of a video game player, I would appreciate all the little jokes in there a little more. But
no.
After the first time, it's like, yeah, okay, we get it.
What about you, Jen?
Yeah, pretty much what everyone else said. I enjoyed it for what it was. It was a good look at the other characters, but it's kind of a weird direction for the overall series to go.
Yeah. I did think it was interesting that that Todd was able to take their, I want to call them avatars, but their sprites or whatever you want to call them, and put them into a video game. I thought that was very interesting, and it wasn't really talked about very much.
Yeah.
That this world that he created for them was essentially a video game. So I thought that was...
Well, when you picture it, do you picture it looking like a video game, or did you picture it looking like real life? I pictured it looking like real life.
No, because they even said like I don't know. I pictured parts of it being more like a video game, especially
I pictured them looking like real life, but everything else looking like sort of like a pixelated.
Yeah, like
game.
a well done one by somebody that's an amateur, because
Yeah.
I think they even described that somewhere where it looks like it was done by college students because they're trying to get a job.
Mhm.
So they've done the best that they can, but they're not great at it yet.
Yeah.
So that's, so that's what I mean, where it kind of looks like a video game to me. And I thought that was a really interesting take on it, but it wasn't really discussed much.
Mm-hmm.
That they were actually removed from where they
Real
were.
life and into this, yeah.
Because didn't they even open up that they were trying to find them, like in the map or something like that, or?
Oh yeah, he's like their coordinates don't make sense.
Yeah,
like they're not
even on any coordinate that we have.
Yeah.
So technically, Todd's created a whole section outside of the
known universe.
The universe, and that's where they were, and I thought that was really interesting.
I'll be honest, I love this one, and it's probably because, like I said, I like role-playing type games. I don't play hardly any of them, though, because I get so sucked into them. I do like the fact that it was torturous, and I think one of the reasons it made sense to skip the second part of the quest where they had to make the sword, because there was not a second way to do that. They had to go through that step by step, and having to listen to that would have been torturous. The reason why I don't feel the first part of the quest was torturous was because we got two different ways. The first group went through as a stealth mission, which was funny in itself, and then the second group had to fight their way through, which was entertaining in itself. But yeah, if we had to do that second part again, that would have been pretty torturous. So
yeah.
Like I said before, I like the fact that we flesh out some of the other characters that we didn't get a lot of in some of the other books. Like we have a description of what Tyler's like and what Jeff is like. We didn't get a lot of Jeff in this one, but we kind of have an idea. Spoilers, we get more about him in the next one. But I like the fact that Scott Meyer is. It seems like in the books he's kind of focusing on some of the characters that he's got, and he's giving them more of a spotlight as we go through some of these different books. I've already read the newest one, the fifth one, and that still is kind of the case. We still kind of pick certain characters, and they get a little bit more of a spotlight than they do in the previous book. So we get a little more well-rounded character. But yeah, overall, yeah, I really liked this one. I was really excited to get to the next one, and I read this one right before the fourth one came out, so I was able to pretty much go right into it, which I loved. Once I finished the fourth one, though, I had the long wait until the last one that just recently came out, and I'm just like, oh, this sucks.
Do we know how many he's gonna do?
No, I don't. I don't think he said anything about how many he's gonna do. I know he has talked about doing sequels to some of his other books. The Authorities, which was another book that he did, I'd really like to see a sequel to it. I don't know if I want to see a sequel to it enough that I want him to put off the next one in this series. It's hard. It's especially when you have a writer that has more than one series. You want to keep seeing one series go, but you also want to play in this other universe from time to time. So it's just like, just keep writing. Just write all the time. So, all right. Well, that's it for our discussion on one.
So the only thing that I was going to say is, this one in particular, again, just reiterated that we need this to be a series. This can't be a movie. This has to be a series. I'd love to see it come to a Netflix or an HBO, and I think like all the material's there, and they would just have to do season 1 is book 1, season 2 is book 2.
Yes, exactly.
And it is there for them to do it. And if you cast it well, I think it would be a killer series.
It'd be an excellent series to follow up Game of Thrones, especially because it's still a medieval setting for the most part, but instead of going super dark, it's humorous. It'd be lighthearted. I think a lot of people would really enjoy it. So
yeah,
because you don't even have to be a real techie person to love it, because it is, even though they are using technology to do the magic, essentially they're just doing magic. I mean, it's just got a techie background to it. So our next book for next month is book 4, Fight and Flight. So we'll be reading and discussing that one, and then after that will be the 5th book that just came out, which was Out of Spite, Out of Mind. So we're just going to keep burning through these because it's a good series, and we decided that's what we're gonna do. What else have you been reading? Has anyone else been reading anything?
I have.
No.
I have.
What you been reading, Jen?
Last Child in the Woods, a book about nature deficit disorder in children. Surprise.
Okay.
An environmental book, but yeah,
Okay.
it's about how every generation kids get less and less exposure to nature and what that means for development as well as society as a whole and the planet. And it was pretty interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. If you've got kids, it's worth a read just because some of it's a little like extreme, but it does talk about, the scientific benefits and behaviors and the things that, just being outside and seeing how the world works and where your food comes from and all that stuff, does for kids' development. Chris and Ray already know this, I'm sure, and you too, but,
Yeah, I like taking my boys out to go do stuff and introducing me to stuff. They just drive mommy and daddy crazy.
Yeah.
Well, their job.
Which Chris and Ray, we still need to have that discussion.
Yeah.
The only thing, honestly, I have started rereading the Dark Tower series. I haven't read it in a year, a couple of years or whatever, so I'm going back and rereading that. But the big thing is the fifth book came out and I read it, and I'm dying for someone else to get to this point because
we're gonna try and get through it.
I think we're on like chapter 10 now.
Yeah, we'll as soon as we're done, we'll send you a message.
Okay, because I'm gonna have to discuss this one. I would really like to wait until the episode where we do it, but I don't think I can.
At least try.
I'm trying.
So I started listening to this series because I usually don't listen to fiction, but I listened to it because I had Kindle Unlimited and they had the Audible version free. Mm. And then, of course, I was like, oh, this is amazing. His voice is just, I couldn't imagine reading this book any other way.
Yeah.
But I got to the fourth book, which I haven't read yet because it wasn't on Kindle Unlimited. And I was like, well, I'm going to wait until it gets on that. I don't want to pay, use a credit. And then it finally did. But now the fifth book's not going to be, and I'm not going to be able to wait, I'm sure. So
I don't want to give anything away, but I really want to hear your opinions on what happens in the fifth book.
Mandy, are you listening or reading?
Listening.
Okay.
So,
I love this series for listening. Like, this is for anybody that's going to get into audiobooks, and that's something like I had this conversation at work with one of the girls I work with. She's a big time reader. She reads books on books every week. So anyway, she asked about the audiobooks, and I said, listen, because she read the first book. She didn't listen to it. And I said, if you get a chance, at least listen to the second book, or re-listen to the first book, because it just gives it another layer, and it's just because of his way.
The voice work is so good.
Oh, he's amazing.
It's fantastic. Anyway, yeah, that's
to the point. Going back to my wish that this was a TV series, gonna be if it happens, I'm gonna be ecstatic. But if the voices aren't even a little bit like the version that we got, I'm gonna be a little disappointed. I'm gonna be honest.
That's not how Phillip sounds.
That's not how Phillip sounds.
You've got it in your head now.
You're not Phillip.
You're not Phillip at all, man. What the fuck? That being said, if you could get him to
maybe like narrate it or something.
Well,
like
not even
voiceover or something.
No, well, I was gonna say if you go to like a cartoon style or something like that, like a Big Mouth, right? Big Mouth style cartoon, and have him do
I would
it
totally watch this as a cartoon too.
Just saying.
Totally watch this.
Daniels doesn't have enough going on. He has to like voice an entire cartoon series. Just him though. He's the only one. Like
I'd still watch it.
Like a Mel Blanc.
I still watch it.
Yeah, I would too.
Now, buddy, come on, let's just do this too.
Well, that is it for our episode on this book. Like I said, our next one we're going to be doing is Fight and Flight. where can we find? Oh, you can find the show at epicallygeeky.com. You can, of course, find us online at Epically Geeky on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The next show will record pretty much at the beginning of the month for next month. And boy, that's going to be a tough month, but we're going to get it done, right, Jen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yay. But where can we find you online, Ray?
Lake Life Artist on Instagram is pretty much the only one. I'm posting sunsets from our view of the world, so that's pretty much the only thing I've been posting lately. And then, of course, here on Marginally Geeky, and then Epically Geeky as well.
Chris, where can we find you online?
Here, and then on Epically Geeky, and on Instagram at Cedar Birch Cottage.
Jen, where can we find you online?
Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at @HetSpellnaBeMe.
Still love it. Mandy, where can we find you online?
Mandy Jo Shelton at Twitter.
And you can find my individual wacky adventure online at Optimus Gene on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. For everyone on the site, have a good night.